Remarkable how little air you actually need. When I started the whole Buteyko undertaking, a huge part of it is just being aware, beginning to become aware of your breathing.
Yeah.
And I think that at first you do a bunch of pauses, but for me, part of becoming aware of your breathing is just always just noticing it just throughout the day. And what I noticed was after doing pauses that I would have this period of calm where I could just sit there in a very relaxed state and my breathing would pretty much do very little.
It would automatically be shallower. Yeah.
Yeah, shallow and almost like still, more like still but shallow. Yes.
Yes.
And then I noticed that, I don't know, something would happen, my mind would wander, whatever. And all of a sudden it would be more deep again. And I kind of had somehow lost control of it, or it's had done its own thing. When we did the intermediate course, when we put obstacles in, what I noticed was it was easier for me to be focused on my breath and easier to limit it. And then my muscles would have to work differently. It was like the muscles in my lungs would naturally have to be vibrating in a small way.
You mean the diaphragm?
Yeah, I just mean whatever those things are you use to breathe. And I know there's all the different ones, but I'm just not very technical. So then I had to start putting the resistance in. Was something that stopped me from breathing too much too quickly. Because what I find is it's like in 1 second, you can just have so much air in your lungs. So it's sort of, it seems like you're starting the pauses, you become aware that you don't want to breathe in, but it's almost like your muscle is so big. It can't lift 2 pounds. It can only lift 50, because you've been doing this for so long. And by putting this resistance in, it kind of helped me have shorter, shallower, and use the little muscle that vibrates.
Right.
Which was hard for me to do.
When you put the resistance in, what did you actually do? Did you put something in your nostrils, or did you?
Yeah, I get pieces of toilet paper, I roll them up into like a little roll, and I just stick them in.
Yeah.
Like that. One in each. And you can start with just one. You can't do both. And do it for 20 or 25 minutes. Like do it for a long time, and then your mind you're never going to be able to have that much mind control. So you sort of drift in and drift out and you get to a relaxed state. It was just sort of a way to stop the runaway train, if that's a way of describing it.
Right.
But it also really helps with relaxation. And then the other key thing is when you remove it, just do it very subtly and very slowly. You've now sort of set a pattern, and you just try and keep that pattern going, whether or not you have them in.
So what you're saying is you're trying to maintain the shallow breathing pattern.
Right, when the resistance is gone, so you try and have, you just sort of, it just sort of helps, because if you've been doing this, and also if your mind is on it, but also not on it, but then you're still doing it, when you take them out, you can still sort of transition along, and it kind of broke. For me, it helped me break the pattern that had been established for years of just sucking in a lot of air, just so quickly.
Yeah.
Because these are, even with your mouth closed, these are pretty big, right?
Yes, they are.
It's like, yeah, so that I just found that really helpful, and I found that really moved my CP up. And I did that when my CP was sort of in the 25 to 30 range. And I think it had sort of stayed there, because I think what was happening was when I wasn't doing my pauses, it was very hard for me to be shallow. Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
What you're saying is very true. That's exactly what happened. And so when Radomir starts working with the intermediate level, one of his main aims is to help people to become aware of their breathing pattern and to train their breathing pattern. Because as he's always saying, there's 2 devices. There's the maximum pause to change your breathing pattern. And then there is actually the job of changing your breathing pattern, your daily breathing pattern. And so by doing what you've done, by restricting the air in your nostrils, you've actually managed to find a way to do that.
Yeah. And it was just helpful because, you know, I think there's so much air that goes in so quickly, you know.
Yeah, but the other key point is your control pause was 25 or above.
Right.
And that's the level that you can start doing the exercise that you actually did.
Yeah, because it was remarkable how little air you actually need. Like that's kind of what happens is you stick it in and then you're kind of sitting there and then you have them both in and they're both in and they're quite restricted. And then you'll be there and you'll go, wow, that was like 10 minutes. And I was just, now I normally sit like in my normal pattern, like sit up and I'm, you know, sometimes I listen to something, sometimes because it's a long time, but it's also really good to just, if you can, sit there too without listening. I mean, because what I find is that the other thing that happens is you breathe shallowly, but then you'll get like a deeper amplitude breath. So it's kind of like your breathing is like this, but it's got a whole bunch of shallow around it. And the deeper one is like long. So then you have to kind of concentrate to get rid of that deeper one.
Yeah.
And just keep it shallow. And it's kind of like has how that whole progression happens. There's a little bit of your sort of concentration that's needed. Because of course you want to sort of breathe that way when you're not thinking about anything.
And do you think that you were able to maintain the air hunger by doing that?
Yeah, I guess that's right. Because because you have to, you know, it's funny because the problem is that you can breathe so much air in that air hunger goes away.
Yeah, but by restricting your nostrils, you were able
to
maintain the air hunger because the instruction was maintain the air hunger. Well, how do you do that? I mean, that's the question. How are you going to do that? Well, you can restrict your nostrils. You can find ways to relax in such a way that you can maintain the air hunger. There's all sorts of things you can do to maintain air hunger, but people have different approaches to it. And you're talking about one approach.
I guess that's another way of looking at it, because I guess maybe because you're restricting, your point is that it takes more physical effort to get rid of the air hunger. Like that's the other way of thinking about it, right? Like you want to breathe in, and now because it's constrained, you're able to not have that breath come in so quickly that it's all over, and you can sort of, it takes a longer time. The key thing for me is more around the muscles. So it's like I didn't have the ability to have that muscle go like this. It had always been going like this.
That's a very good point. It increases the level of CO2 enough that you can relax. So you need good relaxation, but you need the CO2 to get that good relaxation, which is what you get from doing maximum pause. But by just working with your very shallow breathing, you're able to get enough carbon dioxide to get the relaxation, and then the muscles were able to shimmer.
Or approach.
Approach the shimmering so that you knew what the muscles were supposed to be doing. But it is a knack. And we can't teach that knack. You actually have to find it for yourself.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It would be interesting to be able to actually measure the air, be able to kind of just understand, okay, well, how much went in and out over the 20 minutes and measure these things, of course, but.
The other fundamental thing is your control pause went up after you did that.
Yes. Yeah, no, that was the thing I would say that really moved it up. I mean, I'd also done the courses reverse. So I'd done the advanced course and the intermediate. So maybe I was more ready for that training. That was the thing that took from 30 and up to 40 and 45 and so forth. Like that's the thing that I found that really lifted it.
So it shifted from 25 to 30 up to 40, 45.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I would say, yeah. And that, I guess these things are all nonlinear, like you go along and you go along and then so it's always hard to know which of these ingredients was, how important. But I think it was quite an important piece, I think.
I think you're spot on, because when you train the breathing pattern, you're now looking after the level of CO2 every time you breathe.
Mhm.
Because the point is we breathe 25 to 30,000 times a day. And if we can save carbon dioxide throughout the day through changing our breathing pattern, then that's going to be an accumulative effect. So that's going to accumulate carbon dioxide over the whole day, and you'll reduce your losses.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, we're back to the two devices that Vladimir talks about. Maximum pause, that's the start of being able to understand what very shallow breathing is at the end of the maximum pause. And secondly, to train your breathing pattern.
Yeah.
And those are the two things that need to be done. Then, of course, in the advanced training, we look at the role of the mind on the diaphragm, how it affects the diaphragm.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I think it's simple. Worked well for me. So if it works for others, that would be great.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for sharing that, Doug. I think it's important. The more discussions we have, the more it opens up gateways for people to enter into what this very shallow breathing actually is and what training the daily breathing pattern is. And Christopher says he's come to the conclusion that people need to become obsessed with their breathing pattern.
There's an awareness there. It's got to happen.
Yeah. And it's even more important this day and age. People need to become obsessed with their breathing pattern.